Hey everybody, it is Carrie again. Today's topic is really heavy for me. It has to do with parents. Um, Not long ago, I saw a video on Pink was actually being interviewed, or it was, I think, one of her documentaries or something. And in it, they had expressed how um, it was like towards the end or something where she was with her children. It was so adorable. She took them on tour, and one of the things she had expressed was that when she was a child, her parents were her heroes. And I completely agree with her philosophy on that. As a small child, um, your parents are about all you know, and they're the ones that you look up to and you spend the most time with, and they become your heroes. You believe everything they say, you want to do everything they do, you want to please them and make them happy to a certain degree. There is a point where we all kind of grow up and we want to walk our own path and do our own thing, and our parents aren't necessarily all that supportive of it. That causes a lot of like teenage rebellion, or hormones are kicking in, and but when we're really little, we are planted with those seeds of wanting to be just like our parents. They're our heroes. They're there for everything. And, we love and adore them so much because we know of nothing else. That's who we look up to. Excuse me. There is a part that I have to address here really early on because I'm a Christian, obeying thy mother and father, one of the a main commandment. And I've seen many people take this to children are not obeying their parents. Now, that commandment is really written for instruction. There is a part of the Bible, and I wish I would have it right now, but I don't. But off the top of my head, so I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, so forgive me. But it's basically where they state that parents are there to provide instruction. It's kind of like when you have an employee and you're training that employee up. They come in fresh and new and generally don't know, the software applications or anything about the company, and they learn it as they go. Well, that's what parents are there to instruct and guide and lead the child. There are limitations to that. If, for example, your parents are telling you to do drugs or telling you to kill somebody, I do not believe that God wrote that commandment saying, go ahead and do it. Yep, your parents said you should. So you go do that. You go do those bad things. No, I think there comes a point where sometimes the child has to stand against the parents' teachings and basically be on their own and say, no, that's immoral, that's wicked, that's wrong. I'm not going to follow the leader on that one. And if you think it is easy for a child to turn their back on a parent and state, no, I'm not going to say those things, no, I'm not going to do those things, no, I'm not going to be that kind of person, you're really wrong. For the child to even have enough guts to do something like that, it's ripping them apart. Because remember, when they were little, that was their hero. How do you say no to your hero? How do you face the fact that this person wasn't a hero because of the things that they're doing now? Doesn't mean that's who they were then, but people change. So honoring thy father and mother, there's a different way to honor them. I think a child saying no to doing bad things, being sexually molested. A child, just because there's a commandment that says honoring thy mother and father, doesn't mean that that parent is allowed to molest that child. And that child should sit there and say, well, I have to honor my parents. I have to let them do this to me. And it has to be okay. It's not okay. There are limitations to the honor. Honor is a special word. It's not necessarily obeying mother and fathers. There's two different ways to look at it. Are you honoring them or are you obeying them? Honoring them is a little bit different, where you can pull out the good graces and have mercy and show their good qualities by being those in you. You're honoring them by being the good things. Um, you don't have to obey everything they say. Don't let. And I have a mother who throws that commandment at me nonstop. If I don't think the way she thinks, if I don't do the things she does, if I'm not just like her, I am not honoring her. And especially with her being older, they're like, that's completely wrong of you. No, it's not. I have my own life. I have my own ideas, my own ideals. I'm sorry that I can't make you happy 24/7, but I can't. And that's one of the things that you run into when they get older. So there's, different things. If they're abusing you, there's criminal activity, drugs, alcohol. Those aren't your role models. Those aren't your heroes. You won't realize it until you're older, but it's not good. Another, part of the Bible that really made me contemplate this is the story of Jacob and Esau, early on in the Bible. And their parents were Isaac and Rebekah. Isaac's favorite child was the eldest, who was Esau. Rebekah's favorite child was Jacob, who was the younger. And because they each had a favorite, the father was the one who would pass down the blessing when he died and give everything to one of the children. Generally, it was the eldest that got it. It just happened to be in this case that the eldest was also Isaac's favorite. So everyone knew that Esau was going to get the father's blessings and everything when he passed. Now, the mother, knowing that Jacob was her favorite, she wanted Jacob to have everything. She concocted this huge scheme and plan to even make furry arms for her son because Esau had hairy arms and Jacob didn't. And, she did everything but cover the sound of his voice. The father was blind at the time he was passing, and she sent Jacob in there disguised as Esau, where the father could feel him and touch him, and he thought it was his eldest son, and gave him all the blessings and stuff. The children kind of paid for the parents' crimes. The mother was completely wrong in what she did. And in return, shortly after, because Esau was going to kill Jacob because of what he did, she had to make Jacob leave. So Jacob was her favorite, and then she had to send him off to possibly never see him again. So she lost in a huge way as well. The boys were separated for, decades till they came back together, and everything was good between them. But that just goes to show that even though Jacob did what his mother asked him to do, he obeyed her. He did it. It caused great strife, versus him saying, no, Mom, listen, Esau is going to get it. Give it to Esau. We'll still all be a family. They could have been a family unit. She still would have had the child that she loved most by her side. And instead, everything was torn apart because the child listened to the parent. So I don't think that story is just there to show that the child obeys. I think there's the flip side of that story that we can learn from is how it could have been different if the child would not have obeyed. If the child would have said, let's do this the right way, Mom. Let's not scam and scheme and try to take something from Esau that he rightfully deserves because that's who Dad's going to give it to. And I think we still see that in today's age where people are about to die. It's kind of disgusting. I'll be honest with you. And I was a younger child. We didn't have a swimming pool. We had, the little kiddie pools, the plastic ones. But then as we got older, we had, you couldn't really sit in those. They didn't even cover your body. So my mother had gotten this cow tank. It was, if you ever go out in the fields and you see the big silver oval shaped like tanks, they're filled with water for the cows to drink. So it's this cow tank that we could fill with water and we could sit in it. And it was like, I don't know, they kind of remind me of the when you see like the athletes take those ice baths in those big silver tank, and it was like that in our backyard. And I remember as we were filling it with water to heat, so the sun could heat the water, my mom going, "Well, when grandma dies, we'll get a pool." And I was probably about 14 at the time. And I remember just kind of taking a step back and being like, what? And I didn't ask my mom anything. I was so sad in my heart. I was like, Grandma dying. I don't want a pool. I don't want Grandma to die. And Grandma has to die so we can have a pool? I don't want a pool. But this is the type of stuff my mother, my entire life, but when this person dies, they're going to get, she knew she's going to get money or something, and then I can have what I want. I'll just wait for them to die. Well, then as she got older, she stopped waiting for people to die and she just started helping them along so she could get her money and she could add on to her house and change her bathroom. And all that was more important than other human beings. And I did realize that over the course of life, thinking back, going, my mom was always like that. Well, when this person dies, then I'll get their money. And I can have better things. I don't know a time in my life I've ever sat down and thought about what I'm going to receive when somebody dies. I've always thought how sad it's going to be that that person won't be here, or what they left behind, whether it be a family and children or whatever. I have never sat and thought, what am I going to get off of their death? I couldn't even begin to take my mind there because the guilt to even think about that question is so horrific to me. And there's a lot of cases where if people would die and I'd say, I give it to charity. I don't want it. I wasn't that person's friend or family member or loved one because there was something in it for me. I did it because I loved them. I was there because I loved them. And so therefore my mother was not exactly a great role model, because it's one of the great things I've learned. And then when her parents died and other people died, it's like, oh, they got this land, and oh, they built this house, and oh, they remodeled this, and oh, now they can, remodel that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like you're really excited that you got all this money. You don't even care that the person's dead. I just can't do that. That's, I'm not like anybody in my family. I don't know. I don't know because all of them, my brother, my sister, my mother, my father, are like that. And I'm like, how did I end up with such a different mental thought process? Raised in the same environment. I still don't even understand, why I'm the sensitive one, so to speak. But my mother also, when I was growing up, had a lot of mood swings. One minute she loved her children, the next minute, get away from me, I don't want anything to do with you. I remember also my parents, there were times where, sometimes kids in our school, their parents were getting divorced. And I remember thinking, I wish mine would. One, it wouldn't have been that bad because my father wasn't over there a truck driver. We never saw him anyway, once a month. So it was almost like they were divorced parents because, well, once a month we would have went to wherever he's staying for a weekend. Well, it wouldn't have been any different for us. But they would, one time I remember, I must have been, my sister was only like 3 or 4. She couldn't have been 4 yet because my brother would have been born. My brother wasn't born yet. So she had to be about 3, which would have made me about 7. And my parents had this huge fight. And we hid under the kitchen table, and there was a tablecloth there, so we couldn't really see anything, but we could hear everything, and they're screaming, hollering. My mom's throwing dishes. And we were fine, just scared, holding onto each other until the broken butter dish with the butter sliding across the floor flew under the kitchen table. It came really close to us, and it was this jagged-edged kind of dish with, pieces coming at us. We were like, oh my God, we got to get out of here. So we scuttled out from under the table. I remember on our hands and knees going as fast as we could to our bedroom, but then we're looking around the bedroom because we have bunk beds, so we didn't have like an under bed thing. We didn't know where we could hide. I remember us just being so terrified we had to hide. Something was going to hurt us. And this became a very routine when my father would come home, these huge, massive blow-ups. And there were times I wished that he wouldn't come home, because it got so terrifying. And that is, and sure to this day, I have anxiety and PTSD over that too. It was a rough childhood being around that. So even though that's not abuse, we weren't being hit. We kind of were. As a matter of fact, I know I was hit on so many occasions I can't even recall it as a small child. One time I remember I must have been somewhere between 8 and 10 years old. I wasn't tall enough to do the dishes in the sink, but I would scoot the kitchen chair over there and stand on it, and then I could do dishes with my mother. My mother would usually wash, and I would dry, at that age, so I was probably 8 or 9. And so I would dry them and then set them on the counter, and then my mother would put them away. And then, within like the year, I was washing, drying, and then my mom would put them away, and when I was tall enough, then I could do that. But one time I was drying dishes, my mom was washing, and she picked the dish up and went to put it in the other sink for rinsing. We'd rinse it, and then I would pick it up and dry it. And she was going to put it in there to rinse it, and I was drying something else already, and I completely ducked down into the chair, dish in hand and everything. And then I thought, oh, that was just mom with the dish. But the way she had her hand coming at me, I immediately ducked. I remember that was the one and only time in my life my mother ever said she was sorry. And that night, she came into my room, and then she asked me, she goes, "Why did you duck like that in the chair when we were doing the dishes?" I couldn't even respond. I remember being terrified to tell her I thought you were going to hit me, because that meant then she'd hit me. I laid in that bed, and I thought, no matter what I say, she's going to beat me now. And I didn't say anything. She goes, "Did you think I was going to hit you?" And I just nodded my head, yeah. And she hugged me and she said, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not going to do that anymore." It was a lie, but I will never forget the relief I had when I got that hug instead of that hit. I was expecting to get hit, as it was daily. Or God knows what. Sometimes she was just mad if you left a cup sit somewhere and you got hit. And to get that hug, though, when you were expecting to get hit, I'll never forget it. It was like a miracle to that little girl. It was the only time, though. It'll never happen again. Shortly after that, or right around that time, I remember my mom one time saying what she said all the time: "Get out of the house, leave. I want you out of here." And she would phrase it like that, meaning leave the house. Finally, me and my sister said, "Mom told us to leave. We need to leave." And my sister goes, "Where are we going to go?" We really thought we had to leave. I said, "Well, there was this field behind our trailer." And so we walked across the field because we knew what was in the woods was the railroad tracks. I said, "We'll go find the railroad tracks in the woods." So we did that, and I said, "We'll just walk on the railroad tracks." And we did. We walked on the railroad tracks, and they took us into town right in front of the movie theater. And all of a sudden I realized what the movie theater was. I said, "I know that. That's, where the movies are." So we walked over to the movie theater just to look at the posters and stuff. And at that point, then the guy comes out, and we're two little kids, and he's talking to us, and he called the police. I said, "I don't know what these two little kids are just doing here on their own." Well, my mom had already called the police, let them know her children were missing. So the police were happy, when they got the call, and they came and they got us and took us home and whatever. And, I remember my parents, being like, "Why did you run away? Why did you do that?" "Because you told us to leave." So we left. I think by 8 or 9, I had about enough. And I was like, I'm going. I'm just going to go. You want me to leave? I'll leave. I'm pretty headstrong and pretty stubborn. Um, and so, my mother did have her hands full with that. And my poor little sister just traveled along. Well, I'm not going to leave you by yourself. Come with me. And, us out in that woods on the railroad tracks, I mean, we could have been killed. Yeah, I don't know. God was with us. God was with us, no doubt about it. And then we ended up moving out into the country, so we weren't in the city to play with the city kids anymore. And we moved out there. Um, I don't want to say the abuse got worse. It was just more daily screaming, ranting, raving. She'd come home from work. If there was anything sitting in the living room that was unorganized, oh my gosh, she'd go off. I ended up having to make sure, everything was always perfect for when she came home so that she wouldn't yell. And then she'd still find something to complain about. It was, oh, it was just awful. She would complain, but she wouldn't, yell and scream and holler. Otherwise, she'd be yelling and screaming and throwing things and having tantrums. One time I remember I had to clean the full bathroom. So I cleaned the whole bathroom, and the tiles, everything had to be cleaned precisely. I remember sometimes with toothbrushes, cleaning out the grout of the tile in the bathtub or in the bathroom. And, um, so there was a very pristine way to clean that bathroom. It had to be clean right, and so I did it. Then I had to go wash the kitchen floors, which we did on our hands and knees, and we didn't have a mop or anything like that. We were never allowed that stuff. We had a dishwasher, which we weren't allowed to use. Um, so I was on my hands and knees washing the floor. My mother says, "You did not clean that bathroom right." She goes, "You're not done with that, right?" And I'm, "Yeah, I am." She goes, "No, you're not. It's not done right. You go back in there and you do it right." And I did. And I went back in, took a whole another hour to re-scrub the bathroom. And then I came back out and changed my water because it was cold and started washing the floor. She comes back to me and she goes, "Did you re-clean that bathroom?" I'm like, "Yes, I just got done." She goes, "No, you didn't." And she walks up to me and hits me, and I fall on the floor, completely on the floor. And she grabs my hair and drags me halfway across the house into that bathroom. And I'm kicking and I'm trying to get onto my feet because I'll tell you, if you've ever been drugged just by your hair, it hurts. It hurts bad. And I thought she was going to scalp me. And I finally kind of got on like my knees and stuff, and we got in there, and she hit my head against the toilet bowl. She goes, "Tell me what's wrong with that." And I couldn't find anything wrong. And finally, she took her hand behind me. You know where the lid of the toilet seat is in the back tank? That little piece back there. I forgot to clean that little piece. And she ran her finger across it, and she goes, "It's filthy. Clean it." Of course, by this time, I've got a super headache from having my head hit against the porcelain bowl, my hair practically being ripped out of my head. I'm in tears and I'm cleaning it, and I still have to go out and scrub the floor. This was normal in my home. This was stuff we didn't tell anybody because we thought this happened in every home. My parents, not my heroes. Not when I realized we were being abused. We didn't see it as abuse. We didn't know any different. We were raised from itty bitty babies into this, and this was normal. It's not like one day everything just changed. This was normal behavior in my home. There was no reason for me to think there was any type of abuse. They made sure never to leave marks, scars, bruises, none of that. So it was just enough to be abusive without leaving a mark. And my mother was wicked good at that. And then my dad didn't really beat us. He hit us with a belt until we were older. I remember being 19 once though, and drunk, coming home, and it was his house, his rules. I was over 18. I can't really say, but he still shouldn't have done what he did. But I came home and I was like, "What?" And I walked in the door, and I wasn't expecting him to be there, but he had stayed up. It was like 3 in the morning or something like that. And he pinned me against the wall, hit me. I fell to the floor, and then he was kicking me with his boots all I remember, I mean, at some point I was knocked out cold. But I do remember waking up to him kicking me in the back or something, and my mother screaming for him to stop, that he was going to kill me. And then I went to bed. And then the next day I got up and I could barely walk. I was so sore, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't understand why I'm so sore today. And my mother and sister were like, don't you remember last night? Do you remember what Dad did? I was like, well, it's coming back to me, but I mean, at one point I was knocked unconscious. So, I mean, I could never remember the whole thing. Um, but again, normal, normal. If you got beaten to death, well, you did. What were you going to do about it? Who were you going to tell? What were you going to do? A huge thing my father always said in our house was, you're a child, you have no rights. You have no rights. You can tell teachers, you can tell the police, you can tell whoever you want, but you don't have any rights. You're a kid. He was so wrong. But did we believe him? Absolutely. We would just get in more trouble if we told anybody anything. Because we didn't have rights. We were kids. Parents could do anything they wanted. Not the kind of heroes that, I would look towards. The name calling, the verbal abuse, the swearing at us, was absolutely terrible. I couldn't tell you how many times I was called the B word or, stuff like that. However, I did look up to my mother. I mean, she was my only friend for the longest time in life. And we would go on these walks, and I really enjoyed that time where I could talk to her on these walks. It was until one time we were on our walk home. We were about a quarter mile from the house, and we heard this screaming coming from the house. And I, I ran because I knew it was my brother and my sister. My mother, couldn't go that fast. I trucked it. I got there. My sister had convinced my little brother, well, what were they, maybe about 6 and 10 at the time, my sister being the older, to play baseball in the house. I'm not buying this. I'm not buying this at all. Supposedly, she went to swing at the ball and hit him in the head with the baseball bat. Nope. I know my sister. She hit him in the head with the baseball bat. There was no ball. There was no more playing baseball. She hit him in the head with the baseball bat because she got mad. My sister would get mad. She would throw, at my mom, she'd throw knives, chairs. My sister was terribly violent and horrible. No, she hit my brother. She got mad at him and she hit him in the head with the baseball bat, damn near killed him. Then I couldn't go on walks with my mom anymore. I had to always supervise my brother and sister. I had a babysitting job. I couldn't go to it anymore. I had to supervise my brother and sister. My sister got my babysitting job. So here she is, violent and abusive, and she gets my job. So now I have no way to make any money, but she does for doing the bad stuff. And I was like, so ever since I was younger, I thought the world definitely is not fair. But my brother's probably alive today because of it. My sister would have eventually won out and killed him. There was a couple times I know there were drugs in the home, and I've done this in a previous video, so I'll just say it briefly here. One time we were in a car ride home from a close by town, and all of a sudden my mom swore people were following us, and we pulled into a stranger's driveway and went up to their house, and I happened to be going to school with the girl that lived there, and I don't know, we were there for an hour while my mom talked to the guy at the house, and me and my sister played with the girl, and then we went home and the paranoia stopped. But we didn't really know these people, so I don't know how Crazy Woman got out of there without going to the police, or if this was, I don't know. I don't know how she knew them, and I don't know why we were there. But then there was another time where she thought someone was watching her house, and she took out the gun and handed me the gun, and I had to watch my siblings. If somebody came in to shoot them, I never shot a gun. I was like 12 years old. Somewhere between 12 and 14. I was like, I mean, here I was with a loaded gun at 44, and I didn't know how to use it, at that time. My mom made some phone calls, and next thing I knew, everything was good. My father, we had a phone call. He was a truck driver, like I said, and he was like halfway across the country and ended up getting hospitalized for nervous breakdown as a drug overdose. Um, I remember that being very interesting. Another time, um, we were, this is hilarious. Then I didn't even have a clue what my mom was talking about, but we were going to the store. My mom was asking me, um, do you ever itch? Well, yeah, I itch. There's no, like, in your private areas. Is it itchy? I'm like, no. And, I don't know. I was somewhere between 14 and 16 at this point, and so I knew what she was talking about, but I didn't know what she was talking about. Like, why are you asking me that? And we come home and we had gone to the store to get bleach and all this stuff, and we're cleaning all the beddings, and we had to just overhaul the house. I didn't realize till some years later that, yeah, my dad must have brought crabs home from some lot lizard. Luckily, I apparently didn't get them. None of us kids did. So, again, not a good role model. Okay. Um, my mom would have these weird bathtub talks with me. So we weren't going on our walks anymore. But she would, at the end of the day, want to take a bath. She would get in the bathtub and call me in. And I'd have to sit on the toilet across from her while she's washing herself in the bathtub. I couldn't even look. I mean, it was gross. And that's when I'm having personal conversation time with my mother, right? And I'm just like, it was so uncomfortable. And this would happen several times a week. And I remember to this day going, oh my God, if somebody's in the bathroom, I never want to be in the bathtub with them. I don't want to be sitting there talking to them. I couldn't even look. I was like, this is not an appropriate time to have a conversation with your teenage daughter while you're sitting in the bathtub touching yourself. And I don't even know what she all did. There's lots of activity and motion. A lot of times I couldn't look her. I'd have to look her in the eye and just, oh, yuck. No, don't do bathtub time talks with your teenage children. It's just inappropriate. And then, of course, if you watch my porn video, both my parents ended up showing me porn to talk to me about sex, and that turned into a complete family fiasco that, of course, I was the bad guy in again. I just could never come out ahead. My mother would tell me the strangest things. Apparently I was her only confidant in the world. And one time she told me how her and my dad liked to play truck driver prostitute, where she'd dress up and go into town when he's coming home, and he'd pick her up on the corner or whatever, and they'd do truck driver prostitute in the truck. I didn't ask for details. I don't want details. I can't believe I even know that about my parents to this day. Then there was a swingers magazine in the home, and my mom had to explain to me what swingers were, and that her and my father were. I don't know if they actually hooked up with anybody, but they got it because they were interested in it. I became a swinger later on in life, and truly, I'll be honest with you, because of that swingers magazine, that conversation with my mom, I never thought there was anything wrong with it. I really didn't. Bad role model. Bad. Okay, parents, not my hero. Okay. There was also these, when I, of course, because I knew where the porn tapes were and stuff, there was this gay porn sex. It was men together. And I remember asking my mom, oh, well, why would you get those? Like, what's so exciting about that? Like, I didn't get it. And she goes, well, sometimes I like to watch those. She goes, I've always wanted to be with a woman like I'm the man. Like, oh, with a woman? And she goes, well, or with a guy. I mean, where I'm the guy too, where it's two guys. Like I don't know if my mom ever did my dad that way. I don't want to know. Okay, there are some things. I'm scarred enough, okay, damaged enough. But from that conversation, I thought, do you want to be with a woman as a guy, or do you want to do guys? I don't know. Yeah, she could be a woman trapped in a man's body. I have no idea. That's as far as that conversation went. I was so perplexed and confused over gay sex to begin with, because I didn't quite understand it. I had seen lesbian sex, and then I was seeing gay sex, and yeah, it was exciting because it was taboo. And it was like I didn't think people were supposed to do that. I didn't know they could. Which again, in later in life, I thought that's fine. We can do all this stuff. Yeah, I don't know. My mom claims to be a Christian, and these are not things Christians teach their children. No, Jesus did not sit down and say, your children should obey you and become swingers and gay and all this stuff. So for my mother to constantly use that commandment, it's like, I don't think you were thinking about Jesus when you were teaching me this stuff, because I thought it was okay. So don't go using the commandment now. Okay, it's too late, sweetheart. um, Another time when we lived out in the country, I did run away with my dog. My mother told me to leave, and I left. My dog insisted on following me. I couldn't go anywhere without her, and I was 12 or 13 years old, and so I walked a couple miles to the local highway. Then I was on the highway. Apparently, my dad came home again off of the road with a semi, and he ended up getting in his pickup truck and coming there and picking me up. I was almost at my uncle's place where I was going to make a phone call to my aunt in another town, have her come pick me up. And his whole plan, this runaway plan, me and my dog, apparently now I had to take the dog. But apparently people had already told my family that they saw me and my dog walking on the highway. And so my dad came and got me, and I got in a lot of trouble for that, for running away from home again. You know, the growing pattern here, your child keeps running away from home, and they don't even have any place to go, no food, no shelter, and they're still just leaving. You might have a problem in the home. Okay, I'm gonna tell you, the sign of a big problem. I would have to make the dentist appointments, and I remember one time we were on this certain insurance, and my mom said, you know, make sure that they take this insurance. And I called and I thought they did. And my mom then drove us to the dentist appointment because I hadn't my license yet. And they didn't take the insurance. Oh my gosh. I remember being in so much trouble over that. Again, I was only 13 or 14 years old. I'm making doctor's appointments, dentist appointments. I did all the adult stuff except drive. And I would get in so much trouble if I screwed any of it up. I was a kid. When I look back, I was never allowed to be a child. I never had a childhood. I wasn't allowed to be a kid. I had to be the missing grown-up in our home. And I want to go to Disneyland now and just be a kid for a day. Maybe a princess even, because there's no Prince Charmings out there. Another time, I remember my mom telling me to call these DJs and at the end of the call, tell them you love him. Tell them you love him. I mean, so she would have me call people all the time and just say random shit. And I don't know why I did it. I was like, just do what you gotta do. My mom had a bridal business I ended up running, and I would have to place the orders. And one time her credit was running out, so I had to call them as pretending I was an employee and beg. And the stuff she had me do was insane. I would help with all of the truck driving taxes, take care of the roll or tolls and the food stuff, and get everything put together so they could take it to the tax accountant. I did incredible stuff for a kid my age. But then came the Ouija board. So my mom got into spirituality when I was about 16, 17 years old. And we had this ghost, which I'll do a spiritual video on that in more detail. But we did have at least a ghost. My mom says two, or her ghost was different than mine. So I think there might have been two. There was probably two, because the second one I just never got a picture of. And she got this Ouija board. She took me downstairs, and she would read the horoscopes, and I don't know, the horoscopes just didn't do anything for me. The tarot cards she had gotten, she would try to do them with me, and I'd be like, I knew though. I was like, you're not doing them right. Like, she'd read them, and I'd be like, she'd read them out of this book, I go, nope, none of that's right. You know, she said she couldn't like read them. And she got this Ouija board and she tried using it in the basement. And nothing was working until I used it in front of her. And it started talking. And my mom was so freaked out that that was the end of the spirituality. Everything got put away. Um, she didn't know if I was possessed or what the deal was. And the beauty of it was like, I can read tarot cards, and I'm extremely intuitive. I don't use a book or some guide or anything. You know, when I read the cards, it's always freaked her out because she wanted to have that spiritual gift. When she realized I had it, um, it she I wouldn't say was afraid of me, but I would say she went into witchcraft to try to take my power, so to speak, or whatever. She can't, but the woman's nuts. Okay? She doesn't understand anything about this world, more or less the spiritual crossing or another realm. I'm going to tell you that much. Boyfriends, I wasn't allowed to have any unless they were rich. But there was this one boy in town, and he came to our house, and she let him drink at our house and everything. I had to drive him home with his vehicle, and I was supposed to walk, but his father ended up bringing me home. And my mom was so mad that I broke up with him over that. I said, I was going to have to walk 3 miles at 3 a.m. in the morning home because of this guy. No, I'm done with him. He didn't need to drink like that. And then, why were you letting him drink at our house? You supplied the beer, Mom. Which they had never done before. It's the strangest freaking thing, and she was so angry that I broke up with this boy, and I really didn't love him all that much. After my suicide, I had to live in the basement. That's okay. I'm not afraid of basements. I'm not afraid of spirits. I'm not afraid of ghosts. So I wasn't afraid of a basement either. Um, One dog that we had, somebody came and liked it and just gave my dog away. The next dog that we had, she poisoned, and I had to pick it up dead off the floor, bleeding out of its mouth, and take care of that. She drowned our cat and kittens, put our puppies to sleep, started gambling, and I did not know she was a gambler, but because we had been estranged for almost 10 years. And then after my first divorce, me and her got in contact again. And then one night she called me and she says, hey, do you want to go to the casino? I'm like, I haven't been to a casino in forever. I mean, since Vegas when I got married. But I'm not a gambler, so I didn't care. But I thought, well, I'll take $20. We'll go. Why not? It's time with my mom, right? We're getting to know each other again. Yeah. It was endless hours of me just walking around doing nothing while she gambled and gambled and gambled and gambled and gambled. I don't know what she won or lost. I didn't even ask. I got a phone call a few days later from my sister screaming at me, going, you don't take a gambling addict to a casino. Well, why did the family tell me she's a gambling addict? She was so manipulative. She knew I didn't know. She knew I was trying to build a relationship with her again. She called me up and had me take her gambling. And then blamed it on me. I got in trouble. Like, I called her and said, let's go gambling. Nope, that did not happen. I'm not a gambler. I wouldn't call anyone and say, let's go gambling. I've had friends call me and say, let's go gambling. I have gone with them. I have never once in my life asked anyone to go gambling with me because I don't gamble. And yeah, so then she turned it around and manipulated that situation as if I did something. And I don't know how the family even would have a clue that I would know she's a gambling addict. They weren't talking to me. So how would I know this? And then I wonder how bad the whole gambling addict situation was that the family was involved. She must have owed quite a bit of money is all I can guess. Then there was the time when I met my second husband. I did bring them to the first Christmas. And my mom had stuff set up, family pictures where they had all gone on trips that I wasn't invited on, sitting out. And my sister went and took my two stepchildren to go wrap gifts and talk to them. My mother there was a gift that I had bought, and I gave it to my soon-to-be husband at the time, my second husband. I said, here, just so you know, I bought this for you to give to my mother. So this is your gift to my mother. And he's like, okay. And then I wrapped it. When we gave it to my mom on Christmas Day, I said, here, this is from, so-and-so. She goes, oh, really? Did he really buy me something? I'm like, yeah. She knew already. Ended up finding out later because, well, there was hints to it. My sister had emailed me and said that it was wonderful seeing my home, and I'm like, you've never been in my home. Plus the weekend you said you were in my home. We were gone camping. My mother had planted a bug. My brother's a tech genius who was able to get into the Wi-Fi, and they were able to, from a remote location, be able to listen to everything that was happening in a certain radius, which happened to be in that room where I wrapped the gift and I showed it to my ex and all that. And that was there for over 8 years. My mother was listening to conversations in that room. At any point in time, she had access to it. Are you going to talk about not my hero? Not my hero. No. No. And then when I moved in here, that same device was planted. It got found though. It got removed. And yeah, she was fully exposed. They blamed me for taking drugs. And I finally one day screamed at them. I said, I don't take drugs. If you could have seen the look on my father's face of guilt, just looking down like, oh. It's like, I know you guys take drugs. I somehow, through all the craziness, ended up not taking drugs, probably because I saw my parents being crazy, and I said, I don't want to be that. I do not want to be these people. So I'm going to do the opposite of everything they do, because that is not who I want to grow up to be. And I think that's why I ended up being so different. There were so many other women that my father had all over the place. The summer I was born, or the year I was born, he got 3 women pregnant at the same time. I do know my other half sister who has passed, and there's a video on that. I have a half brother out there somewhere. I don't even know who he is. It took forever for my father to even own up to it because it had to be some big hush secret. But then there was women all the time. He had girlfriends when he was on the road everywhere. He was just a big flirt, and so yeah, he had girlfriends all over the place. When the whole porn video thing happened and the conversation with my dad about, how it got uncomfortable, him wanting to, not him wanting anything, asking me questions like, do you want to do that? Have you thought of doing that kind of stuff? Which made me uncomfortable. Ended up causing, thoughts of, well, did you want to do something with her? Did you, things like that, I guess, were questions my mother had asked. My sister had told me that. But then yet to this day now, my sister says, well, that stuff never happened. Crazy people, okay, trying to cover up their lies, manipulation, control, whatever. I mean, I know the truth. I lived it. But anyway, within a couple weeks after that, my mother had my father take my sister, who was 12 at the time, on the road for a week to prove that, he wouldn't do anything to his children. It's how manipulative my mother is. Right away, she jumped on that, and she goes, oh, if we have you take, one of the daughters, and she says, well, you never did anything with her. See, it'll prove you would never. I mean, not that I was going to anybody or telling anybody. I was just uncomfortable about it because it's not like anything actually happened. Like, what was I going to say? I couldn't accuse him of doing something he didn't do. But right away, my mom immediately have to have a cover story. Have to have a cover story. Like, she needs to calm down. She just does. She's ridiculous. But anyway, my sister did come home from the road and told me about this woman that she met that made reference to being her new mom. And I remember going, oh, don't tell mom. Don't tell mom about that. Nope, that's our secret. Okay. I was like, oh, Jesus, you introduced her to one of your mistresses? Like, are you insane? And we kept it a secret. No, she never became her new mom. So I don't know. But so many times loyalty have been broken, and all I can say is my situation with my parents is probably minimal compared to what some of these children deal with the abusive beatings to where they have to hide the kids because there are bruises and cuts and unconsciousness and the sexual, molesting, the starving them, there's so many more worst case scenarios that I actually had it good. But would I say my parents are my heroes? Absolutely not. My parents taught me everything I didn't want to be. And I guess I can thank God for that little bit of wisdom. There's 3 pieces from the Bible that I came up with on this. One is from Psalms, which is the book of songs, basically, poetry songs. Chapter 27, verse 10. For my father and my mother have forsaken me, but the Lord will take me in. And that is the truth every time. As a little girl, I remembered the song, Jesus Loves Me, This I Know. My favorite Christmas songs were Away in a Manger, O Little Town of Bethlehem, and O Come Only Faithful. Odd, I know. They were my favorite songs. I know the Lord took me in as a very small child, even before I accepted Him. And therefore, for any of you that have been through really horrific situations and you think God wasn't with you, He was there. God won't necessarily stop evil from happening, but He will take it and turn it into something good. And you are that something good. Don't turn around and do that to other children. Instead, be their hero. Show them the right way that things can be done. Then there's Proverbs, the book of wisdom, chapter 22, verse 6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and even when he is old, he will not depart from it. I'm sorry, I'm going to read that again. Oh. I get teary-eyed, and then I can't read through the tears, and I got teary-eyed, so let me try that again. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. And that is true. If you train them the right way, and parents are there for discipline and training, and I'm not saying that children should be able to do whatever they want, but the examples I've given are clear examples of things not to teach your children or do to your children. I mean, I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to say that those things should not have happened. Those are not, and there's no book to train parents. They did the best that they could do with the illnesses that they had, is how I have to always add that in the end. It says, because my parents will say, we did the best we could do. Yes, with the illnesses that you had, because they were ill. They were drinking. They were taking drugs. There was clearly gambling, which I found out later in life. They had illnesses, addictions. Sex was clearly an addiction. With the illnesses that they had, they did the best they could. I just wish they would have wanted to be better people themselves. And they would have been able to cure those illnesses. The problem is they didn't want to be better people themselves. So therefore, there's no way they could be a better parent. Because they didn't want to. So you did the best you could do. But you didn't want to do better either. Is my answer to all of that. And my last one is Galatians chapter 2, verse 4. Yes, because of false brothers secretly brought in, who slipped in to spy out our freedom that we have in Christ Jesus, so that they might bring us into slavery. And that's kind of how I feel about my mother and my father at this point. Yet because of false brothers secretly brought in, who slipped in to spy out our freedom that we have in Christ Jesus, so that they might bring us into slavery. I will never be their slave again. And you'd have to kind of watch the fairy tale video coming out soon. I did feel like a slave as a child. I look back and I still think I was. I wasn't loved like a child. I was loved like a servant. And that's not much different than child labor and slavery. Are my parents my heroes? When I was really little, that was all I knew. And at that time, they were. They were all I knew in this whole world. I had no other heroes to look up to. Are they now? No. They'll be my heroes when they beat their addictions, when they can say, I'm sorry. I'm not saying that, I did everything right either as a child. There's things I apologize for too. But my parents will never say, I'm sorry for anything or admit they did anything wrong, because God wrote a commandment that says, obey and honor thy father and mother. Well, God will explain that commandment to them someday, because they're taking it in a manipulative way to suit their purpose. And all I can do is forgive and let it go. Let them go. I have to cut those ties and I have to let them go, because keeping that connection continues to hurt me. It continues to manipulate and control me, and I can't do any good for the world if I'm living in that bad place. And it's sad. No, my parents are not my heroes. I hope yours are. I'd love to hear some good stories. I know my story could be so much worse, so I'm thankful to God for, the good that was there, and that it wasn't as horrific as it could have been. And I know this, my heart and my prayers go out to any child that is suffering today. Because if you're watching this and you beat your child, or you're taking drugs or drinking or anything like that, just know this: that child still looks up to you. Turn your life around and be their hero, not their tormentor. Please. All right. Love you all.